What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another look at recent sales for vintage Kenner and Palitoy Star Wars items, and they are some beautiful mint-on cards that we're going to cover. Two different Canadian Power of the Force Yak Faces sold. One of them not in such good shape, one of them an AFA 85, and I really think that the seller of that AFA 85 made a huge mistake selling it on eBay in an auction. So we'll dig into all that. And I just want to say thanks to my Patreon supporters. You'll have to excuse my voice. We are right in the middle of pollen season right now here in Tennessee, and my allergies are really bad this year. The first time in several years where I've actually had any allergies. So let's go ahead and dig in. Here was one that was sold from a seller I've bought from in the past, LM Lane. I don't know this seller personally or anything, but I've had good experiences buying from him. And he had a pretty nice looking 20 back E Death Star droid. Blister looked pretty good. It had some light creases to it on the card, but I was shocked by this final sales price of a little under $400. That seems like a really good deal to me relative to what it is. I mean, this was in pretty good shape, probably on the ballpark. It's somewhere between a 75 and an 80. Clear blister. Structurally, the blister was great. It was a punched example with a Kmart price sticker, but $400 seems really cheap for that one. That seemed like a really good deal there. Here was another one that kind of surprised me on the low end. This was an Obi-Wan Kenobi 21 back B with the price sticker punched example. Graded AFA 80, straight 80s for the subscore. This was the gray-haired Kenobi. Very nice example, and that one sold at $710, which I'm a little surprised that one didn't approach closer to $1,000. That seems like another really good deal there. It looks like maybe the blister's got some heat seal issues around the outer lip of the blister, and that happened to a lot of these, especially the Empire Strikes Back line, where the blister was overheated as it was attached to the card, and it caused some warping. So you can kind of see some warping on the left-hand side, and then at the bottom here on the right-hand side, you could just see some wrinkling there. And if you see that, don't get too, especially a graded one, don't get too concerned, because those do happen. And it'd be one thing if you saw some glue residue or litho damage, things like that. But this one very clearly just got overheated in the factory. Here's a good close-up of it here as well. So you can kind of see it in the upper left-hand corner as well as in the lower right-hand corner. Just some issues with the blister. So I guess that held it back, but to me, that was a really good deal at $710 for a 21 back Obi-Wan. Here was a CAS 85 41 back E for the Hoth Imperial Stormtrooper. This one did have some very light yellowing to the blister. Unpunched example, no price sticker though. That one sold for $456, which I think is probably about right. If this had been a clear blister, I bet this would have easily cleared $700. That's just a guess. Nothing to base that on other than the Imperial Hoth Stormtrooper on ESB card backs, especially clear blister, are very sought after. We've looked at a number of examples that have sold here on eBay over the last 6 months that have gone for big money. So this one probably was held back because of that, despite the high grade overall CAS 85. 85, 85, 80 were the subscores. Next up, here was a beautiful 31 back B walking photo, Luke Skywalker Bespin fatigues, and very high subgrades, CAS 80 plus, unpunched, no price sticker. That one was listed for $1,150. Best offer accepted on that was $1,100. Probably about right. Quite honestly, I'm surprised it didn't even just instant sell for a 31 back Luke Bespin clear blister. I sent it out to my Patreon supporters. I don't know if one of y'all bought it or not, but I just thought that was a particularly good deal, given that most 31 back Luke Bespins are commanding big money. Same seller also had this CAS 85 41 back A survival kit offer, R5D4. It was a punched example, no price sticker, but very high subgrades, all straight 85s from CAS. Beautiful clear blister example. That one was listed for $850. The best offer accepted on that one was $800. Probably a little high would be my guess on that, but it is what it is. R5D4 on ESB card backs just look really nice, and it certainly looks great with that survival kit offer. The red for the survival kit offer really matches nicely with that particular card back. Here was another 41 back. A lot of 41 backs in this batch. This was a clear blister Lobot unpunched. listed for $190. I sent this to my Patreon supporters as well. I said, hey, this seems like a pretty good deal here. This one was in pretty good shape. Unitoys factory code on the back. I'm guessing this one would pretty easily grade an 80. It did have one little small crease on the upper left-hand corner there, but I still think it gets an 80 overall. And it was listed for $190, which is a pretty good deal as it is, but it did end up selling for $170 in a make an offer situation. Here was another one that I sent out. It was listed in an auction for starting at $99 with a buy it now offer of $250. And it's lightly yellowed. This is a 41 back, I think D or E. I couldn't remember. But this is for Bosk, unpunched, no price sticker. And I sent it out to my Patreons. Quite honestly, I would just buy it now at $250. That's a really good deal. And it is slightly yellowed, admittedly, but, you know, Bosks on ESB card backs are pretty desirable, especially at $250. You know, it had some very, very faint creases that you could only see in certain light, but I think this grades all day long in 80. And I thought that was a great deal at $250. That's a price I would have paid all day long. So I assume that one of my Patreons bought that because it sold within like 10 seconds of me sending it out for the buy it now price of $250. Here was another one that sat for a little while, but this was a beautiful clear blister 65 back B Star Destroyer Commander or Death Squad Commander if you feel like talking dirty to me. This was a beautiful example though, graded AFA 80, 75, 80, 80 were the subscores on that one. It got the 75 for the card score because it had some wear around the hang tab, and then it also had some very light litho damage in the upper right-hand corner, probably from where the price sticker was removed. That one did finally sell at $445. Here is a 65A Han Solo with, you know, a yellowed blister, Kmart price sticker, punched example. Not perfect by any means, probably a low 80 at best. It had some wear and some light creases around the hang tab there. But it seems like Han Solo on any Return of the Jedi, whether it's clear blister or yellowed blister like this one, they command big money. And this one sold for $540. You can probably count on closer to $1,000 if this one had still been a clear blister, or if it had been like the alternate image, things like that. So anyway, that one did sell for $540 in an auction. Here was another beauty. This was a 65 back, 65 back B R5D4. Pretty clear blister, not perfectly clear, but pretty close to clear with a Toys R Us price sticker, punched example. That one did sell at $350. Really nice example, though. Certainly a lot better shape than a lot of the Return of the Jedi examples I've seen out there. This one is as close to clear blister as you can get, and without it being clear. I mean, it's you could tell it's just very faintly yellowed, but I thought it was worth every penny of $350. Really nice example there. I got two different Yodas that sold, both of them 77 back A's. First was a yellowed blister, unpunched example with a Toys R Us price sticker. It had a pretty pronounced crease in the lower left-hand corner, but overall, I'd say this probably grades out at about a 75 because of that crease. Yeah, there's a good shot of the crease there. So maybe it had a chance at the 80 if it was only that crease, but on the back, you can see another faint crease that doesn't show through on the other side. But that will probably hold it back to about a 75 or 75 plus. Maybe you get lucky and get an 80, but I think it's probably more like a 75 plus. That one sold at $371. And then this one was a CAS 80 clear blister, 77 back A, 80, 85, 90. So really nice high sub scores. Beautiful crystal clear blister, unpunched, no price sticker. That's pretty nice. And it did sell at $766. I sent it out to my Patreons, and I think I might have also had it in the What to Buy video last week. And, you know, I wasn't sure where this one was going to end up, but I thought $766 for that was a great deal. Here was a UKG 80% 79 back ATST driver. And again, we got a clear blister on the ATST driver. Just like with the Power of the Force that almost always stays clear blister, this 79 back was also clear. So I don't know why it's always with the ATST driver that manages to stay clear, but this one did as well. And again, it was a UKG 80%, 85, 80, 80 were the sub scores on that 79 back A. Beautiful example. That one was listed for 300 pounds. Best offer accepted on that one was 235 pounds, which equates to 292 US dollars. Pretty decent deal on that, I feel like, given the clear blister. Here was a beautiful tri-logo Princess Leia Organa. It obviously had some pretty pronounced litho tears in the upper right-hand corner. I bet you anything that was a KB Toys 2-for-1 price sticker too. Should have left it on there because I think this one would grade a lot higher if he had just left it on there. The blister was in pretty structurally sound condition. One little ding in the lower left-hand corner of the blister, but wow, this was a beauty. And even with that litho issue in the upper right, I felt like this was going to sell for more than $625. They very regularly sell on Facebook groups for over $1,000, very regularly. So I was a little surprised it didn't approach that number, given that this is probably about a 75 unless I missed something. Yeah, there's just a paper scrape. It was listed as no cracks in the blister. Bubble has a corner dent lower left. Oh, it says a very tiny 1/8 inch crack. So apparently it did have a small crack in the blister. Let's see if we can find it in the photos here. Hard to tell in the photos, but it's a shame it did have a crack. But, you know, so that might explain why it did sell at $625, given that, you know, the figure is so small relative to the oversized blister that just over time cracks can happen. It happened to me with my Dengar. So that explains it now as to why it sold for $625. Here was a CAS 80, 77 back A, Luke Skywalker with the gunner, alternate image, target, price sticker, punched example. So there you go, 85, 80, 85. And, you know, it had a yellowing to the blister, but you know this is going to sell for a lot of money because it's fairly high grade and it's got the alternate image Luke gunner. So I had assumed this was going to go for over $1,000, and it sure did. It sold for $1,276. This was a seller that I've bought comics from, but he obviously has some action figures as well. So $1,276 took that one home. Here was an AFA 70 Luke Skywalker Imperial Stormtrooper disguise from the same seller. AFA 70 Power of the Force, unpunched, no price sticker. And I think I sent this out to either Patreons or on the What to Buy video. And I said, hopefully it stays under 1,000, just given that it's a lower grade. It's a 70 grade. And it did. It stayed at 740, which I thought was actually a pretty good deal, given that we've documented loose, complete Luke Stormtroopers selling for $600 or more, ungraded, just loose, complete. So to get it for $740, that seems like a drastic lower than expected price to me. I would have guessed it. You know, it did have a crack. You know, I want to disclose that, and that's probably why it got the 70. Let's see what the blister score. Yeah, the blister score was a 60. So obviously the crack is accounted for in the grading from AFA. But maybe you're just worried that it's going to blow through it, you know, during shipping. That's something to think about. But the crack doesn't look too bad. I would say that the 70 score is appropriate. 80 score for the card, figure score 85, and then the 60 because of the cracked blister. But to me, that's a really budget-friendly way to get a mint on card Luke Stormy, and worth every penny of $740, even with that crack. Now we're going to dig into some big boy items. We've got the Nikto Power of the Force, which I believe was an Australia and New Zealand exclusive. Don't quote me on that, but I think that Nikto was one of the ones. Nikto, the Gamorrean Guard, and the AT driver. And those are the three, I think, that are Australia and New Zealand exclusives. I could be wrong on that, but I think those are the three. And two of the three were for sale in auctions as well. Now, obviously, this card was really rough, but this was the Nikto mint on card. Very tough to find this one. That one sold at $13.68. It is what it is. It's just one of the rarities from the Power of the Force line, and it was in really rough condition, probably like 50 grade condition, just given the condition of the card. But it still sold for $13.68. Here was the big one. This was an archival case AFA 85 Gamorrean Guard, very similar to the one that Chris W. just got in for his collection that we had in the live stream. But this was an AFA 85 with the flying saucer top there, just like Chris's example. 85 grade. Wow. And again, this is an Australian New Zealand exclusive, straight 85s for the subscore. That one sold for $5,200 in an auction, which you could make an argument that's actually still pretty low. Hake's examples have sold anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000, so $5,200 is, in my opinion, actually a pretty good deal. There was $100 shipping on it, so let's call it $5,300. Maybe you got another $500 in taxes. That still puts you underneath $6,000. And for an AFA 85 for such a rare item, that's not a bad deal at all. Now we're going to show you the two Yak Faces, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this. This is the perfect example of one that could sell in an auction, okay? It's really, really rough. This is the Canadian example of Yak Face. It's not grade worthy. This is kind of to complete a collection if you're trying to complete the Power of the Force run. Really nice, budget-friendly option. Do I think it's worth the $52.98 that it sold for? I do not. I think that price is insane. No way I'd pay that. But there's somebody that probably wanted it for its collection. But when you compare it to this one that sold down in Australia, that's what makes this price even more insane. If you look at this one, you're assuming that this is still a legitimate mint on card and has not been resealed, right? $52.98. This one sold down in Australia. It was an AFA 85, and it sold for 13,000 Australian dollars. It's Australian dollars, which is 8,400 US dollars. So, I think personally, if I owned this item, this is a true grail in this grade to get this Canadian Power of the Force Yak Face. It's a very difficult item to find, especially in this grade. And why on earth would anyone want to sell this on eBay and pay state taxes and fees and run the risk of having a scammy buyer versus doing it through Vectis or Hakes or even Chris over at Rogue 5? Because I think that, you know, if you look at 85s that have sold on Hakes, it's very regularly 5 figures, okay? Where $10,000 is probably the minimum. So even if you do have to pay slightly higher fees versus, versus selling it on eBay, then I still think you're going to make your money back because the final sales price is going to be significantly higher. You're going to get more eyeballs for the type of buyer that wants to buy this. The type of buyer that wants to buy this is not on eBay, okay? They don't have time to be on eBay. If they're buying $10,000 mocks, they just go to Hakes or Vectis and they get it all in one spot. They don't have time to scour eBay, especially in an auction. So I don't know. I mean, this seller is one that I cover regularly. They've had 330 transactions, and you know, I think it's a legit seller. So I don't think it's like a fake sale or anything like that. But to me, this was a big mistake. I would not have sold this on eBay. It just seemed crazy to me, given that I think if he had taken this exact same item and put it on Hakes, in the next Hakes or in the next Vectis or whatever, it would have easily crossed $10,000, in my opinion. So, again, I'm not trying to dog on the seller. I'm just thinking you got to figure out what's good for eBay and what's good for higher and more exclusive auctions, right? I have no problem selling a $50 PSA 9 Star Wars card on eBay, okay? Because if it is a scammer, why are they bother scamming me for $50? I don't care about $50. But whenever I go to sell some of these big items behind me, you know, like my Tri-Logo Luke Stormtrooper, for example, there's no way in hell I'm going to put it on eBay. I'm going to sell it on Rogue 5 because it's all trusted buyers. It's people that are not trying to scam me. So, you know, to me, I just think it was a big mistake, and it's definitely not how I would have handled something of this magnitude. But I'm not, again, it's his item. He can do what he wants with it. But I think to maximize profits, I probably would have looked at the higher end auction houses for something like this. So anyway, I probably beat a dead horse, but I wanted to talk more about that because I'm shocked that somebody sold an AFA 85 Canadian Power of the Force Yak Face in an auction on eBay. So I hope you enjoyed this look at recent items. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.